Waffle69 here, and welcome back to the channel. Hey guys, today we are going to be doing a ship analysis on the Francesco Ferruccio. This is the Tier 7 light Italian cruiser that will now be, I believe, of update 14.8. The second tiered battle pass reward ship. I believe the battle pass is going to be 2,500 doubloons. Somewhere between 2,500 to 3,000 doubloons. It's going to give you that second tier progression line, and this is the ship they are throwing in there. Well, it isn't the exact ship. It is a copy paste ship, almost identical. It's something like the Optio or whatever. It just has this cool like Roman camo Italian theme to it, but that ship is based on the Francesco. And my job here is to showcase her, talk a little bit about her, and do a import analysis, and just describe some tactics, tips, and tricks what I found to make her effective in game. That's kind of what I want to do here with this ship analysis. So without wasting too much time, let's go ahead and get right into it starting with the armor layout. And this is a crucial part. Let me actually send this lady to the reserve, and let me turn off all the flags. I apologize about that. So let's start with the armor layout, and this is a big part about the ship that I want to talk about. You have a 16mm nose, you have a 16mm ass, and your deck armor is 25mm, but you also have a shell catcher here on the back, so remember that when you are kiting. Plating of 20mm and a armor belt of 52. So what is all this? Like, what am I trying to say when I'm kind of talking about the armor scheme in a very monotoned tone? The armor on this ship is horrendous. Yes, it is bad. It is so inherently bad that any battleship that even remotely shoots at you pretty much has above a 50% chance of getting a citadel. And that further is emphasized when I go ahead and strip away everything and showcase you the massive citadel. It comes from just under halfway up out of the water of the ship. 20mm torpedo bulkhead with a 52mm off the ship. So that is a 52 plus 20. We're going to 72 essentially, and then we add our side plating on there of an additional 52. Yeah, this thing has 2mm effective armor, 110 something around there, maybe 120 somewhere around there. And yeah, this thing just punches, or is a punching bag, excuse me, for enemy battleships and cruisers too. I mean, cruisers love this thing, and it just blows up in a spectacular fashion. And also by the turret layout, as you see, right here, having the two quad turrets, one forward, one on towards the aft end of the ship. It doesn't necessarily make it hard to eat citadels because you're having to showcase a fair profile in order to get all guns to bear. So unless you want to shoot 4 guns and do half damage or only utilizing half of your DPM, be my guest. But most of us want to be a little bit courageous and a bit of a risk taker to go ahead and utilize our entire broadside, which is our total of 8 guns. We want to do that. So to do that, we're going to have to showcase our side a little bit, which then is showcasing our citadel, which is easy to be punched. But even if we're not doing that, even if we're just utilizing our main gun, 16mm of frontal nose armor is easy to punch through and go ahead and then penetrate 52mm of armor. So what, 74mm of effective armor, you're going to be eating citadels left, right, and center. So what I'm trying to tell you is this ship is fragile. So you're going to have to play incredibly cautious. For a cruiser lover such as myself, I will say right out the gates that I do actually have fun in the ship. But this ship is not incredibly strong at all. And again, that'll become more abundantly clear as we progress throughout this ship analysis. Going to the survivability, it's clocking in at 28,400. This is on the lower end of the spectrum when it comes to HP via its tier. I believe the most HP is a Toulon at 42,000, and the least coming in at the Champion at 26,000. So we're just 3 ahead of that, or behind the Champion. I believe it's just all the Atlantic class cruisers are ahead of it, and then you have the Francesco is right there at the 4th slot for the 4th lowest HP pool per its tier, with a 10% torpedo belt deduction or reduction. Again, it's a cruiser. You probably don't want to be eating torpedoes, and which rather sucks because you have a low HP pool and you don't even have the ability to slot hydroacoustic search on this ship. Yeah, a little bit of a rough start for this thing. going into the artillery, and I will go ahead and showcase the gun firing angles on the ship. They're actually not terrible, especially in the kited position I found. Pushing in, again, not too bad. Pretty easy to utilize, but again, because of the nature of the ship and its lack of armor, you're basically taking your less than stellar armor scheme, lighter armor scheme to be more precise, and you're basically increasing the amount of effective armor you have by angling, hence allowing larger caliber AP shells to go ahead and penetrate your armor and detonate, because it has, it penetrates more armor and thus detonates the AP shells inside your ship, causing Citadel ribbons. So it's a double negative with the ship when it comes to its armor scheme and its gun firing angles, at least in my opinion. It does have the 2x4 152 millimeter layout and gun caliber. This reload time on these guns is rather poor at 11 seconds. And keep in mind, this is considered a light cruiser, so the reload time is even more important when it comes to light cruisers, especially because light cruisers are more DPM focused. And I think of all the light cruisers, again, I could be wrong. It is up there. It's got to be within the top 5 for longest reload, because the vast majority of the cruisers are all heavy cruisers that are going to be exceeding 10 kilometers. But I believe the next light cruiser considered ship is the Omono, right, with the 155 millimeter guns, and that thing comes in 11.5 seconds. So you're right there with the Omono, and the DPM is rather shit. It does have access to HE and SAP. And when it comes to the HE DPM, the HE DPM clocks in at 91,600, give or take, and the SAP DPM clocks in around 168,000. These aren't really respectable numbers when it comes to being a light cruiser, given the fact that we have ships like the Atlanta with 315,000 HE DPM, the Helena with 232,000 HE DPM. You could kind of see where I'm going. I mean, even the Duca di Abruzzi, that tier 7 Italian cruiser, is clocking in at 168,000 HE DPM. So realistically, you're far below that as well. So again, not off to a good start. So the armor sucks. The guns aren't incredibly good in regards of your HE and SAP DPM. So what is this thing really, realistically good at? Remember, this ship was part, I believe, of the salvage whatever event for Christmas around 2 Christmases ago. I believe you had to progress through certain stages with certain ships being unlocked until you got to the grand prize, which was the Kitakami. I think this was number 2. It's either number 1 or number 2. I couldn't remember exactly because, again, that event kind of blew over my head. But yeah, that's when they gave it away. So ships that are given away, or very, very low resource count, that in-game resource count, you're not expecting to be anything phenomenal, right? And this thing kind of fits that boat, or kind of fits that description. But moving on to kind of the more meat and potatoes of the HE. The HE damage is coming in at 2100 with only a 7% fire chance, and it can go ahead and penetrate 255 millimeters of armor. These guns do traverse these guns do traverse, or at least the number 2 traverses 360 degrees. So the 180 degree turn time is 15 seconds with a maximum range of 17.5. Now the range is actually not bad. It is very usable range. Also, given the fact that you have the spotter plane on top of that to go ahead and increase that by additional 20%. And then coupled with the shell velocity of the ship, both HE and SAP coming at 995 meters a second, these shells do have a lower flight time through the air to reach the target, especially at those longer ranges. So hitting the target with relative ease shouldn't be too hard of a problem for this Francesco ship to execute properly, right? The semi-armor piercing is 3,850 with a value of the SAP to penetrate 42 millimeters of armor. Again, this is the only 152 millimeter gunned SAP gun cruiser at this tier. I believe the Zara and the Gorizia both are 203 millimeters, so they're going to go ahead and bump that up with the penetration to like 52 or 57 millimeters. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but again, a wider or a bigger range of penetration. It's going to penetrate thicker armor plates than the 152s. Again, in my opinion, the Francesco really shines at shooting enemy destroyers and lightly armored ships such as like Fijis and like other cruisers. That's what you really want to be doing. Unless you can pinpoint superstructures of battleships, it's rather lackluster or have a side profile, you're going to find yourself shattering a decent amount just because of the lower millimeter of penetration that the sap can penetrate. So keep that in mind too. This thing does have torpedoes. It has the 2x4 533 millimeter launchers that go ahead and have a max range of 13.5 kilometers. These torpedoes do reload in 2 minutes or 120 seconds. The maximum damage is pretty standard for Italian cruisers at 13,900 with a speed of 56 knots and a detectability range of 1.1 kilometers, hence giving us a reaction time of 7.3 seconds. Again, these torpedoes are nice because they have longer ranges, but they do travel rather slow. But again, I don't know what it is with slower torpedoes. I always find myself landing slower torpedoes, especially when it comes to cruisers, just because you usually dump them in a specific area, not at a said ship. And usually ships will sail into them because of the longer ranges and more time it takes to get to that max range. Usually gives the opponents or the opposition ship to have time to sail within that torpedo range and run into your torpedoes. Usually that's what I find. Again, that could just be me, but you know, it's an interesting little take there. Again, we have the airstrike depth charges, I believe, or are these the ship-based? Let me see. These are ship-based, my bad. They are ship-based depth charges, clocking in at 3,200 damage, 2 bombs in a charge, 4 bombs per charge, and reloading in about 40 seconds. Again, pretty standard. Again, I don't think your main job is to be hunting submarines in the Francesco. Let's just put it that way. A defense is ass. Continuous damage of 175 with a max firing range of 4.6. This is really just self-defense. You're not really going to be doing your allies any favors here. You're not going to prevent a strike, and you're really not going to deter an aircraft carrier either below or above tiers from striking you. Tier 6s can have their way with you, and as well as Tier 8s can as well. Going into the maneuverability, and this is worth talking about a little bit because the maximum speed of this ship, let me go to her real quick. She has the highest top speed for her tier at 36.5 knots. She has the best rudder shift per tier at 6.6, and her turning circle radius is 620 meters, which is not the best. It is actually etched out by a fair amount of other ships, but we're coming in around 9. The best one goes to the Tsar at 580 meters, and even the Atlanta, the Uganda, the Flint all have better turning circle radiuses in this, but it's still pretty respectable at that 620 meters, right? You can really turn on a dime on this thing, and especially time it right, that you can dodge a lot of incoming salvos as well. And then going into the concealment value of this ship, it does indeed have the lowest standard base detection for its tier at 9.6 kilometers. I obviously do recommend taking the commander's skill that goes ahead and lowers it even further. You can get that down to like 8.6, I believe, or 8.4 kilometers, something really, really ridiculously low. And usually I would say go ahead and keep that because it's only going to bode well in your favor, and it really is a good ambush predator ship. But I do go ahead and take the heavy sap, heavy HE shells because I want to buff my damage. I need to do something to compensate for my anemic reload on a light cruiser, and I think that's where I found it. It does bump your concealment though, plus taking the concealment expert skill to 9.9 kilometers, I believe. I can go ahead and check real quick. Yeah, 9.9 kilometers. Again, though, I think it's worth it because 9.6 and anything lower than that is really respectable anyways. And even under sub 10 kilometers is incredibly respectable. So I don't really think you're losing out on much of the overall playstyle of the ship if you go ahead and take the heavy HE, heavy sap shells, at least in my opinion. So, and that's the way I found the most success in playing the ship personally. So, but yeah, guys, that is the Francesco Ferruccio. She is an interesting little boat. There is fun to be had in her for sure, but she is not the strongest ship, at least in my opinion. And hopefully the gameplay I'm going to show you emphasizes everything I just explained to you in port. So let's go ahead and take a look at that, guys. Alrighty guys, and here we are in battle, and I will go ahead and put the commander build as kind of like a refresher up in the top right corner. I know this was requested by somebody in the comments before on my videos, and it just allows us to kind of refresh ourselves on how I have the ship built and how it's going to influence my play style or playthrough during this particular battle. So the first things first, guys, with the Ferruccio, or however the fuck you say it, you need to play rather, what's the word? I don't want to say passive, but let's just go ahead and use the word conservative. We need to play and kind of let the battle develop a little bit. I think a lot of people, because we have the fuel exhaust smoke, which again I forgot to mention in the port analysis, but there it is. We do have the fuel exhaust smoke on this ship. A lot of people feel like we have to go ahead and make use of that right off early in the battle, and they're not necessarily wrong. I actually think I go ahead and do use this, but given the fact, because I don't have Superintendent yet, I only get 2 charges base, which isn't particularly impressive by any means. That's why I full and wholeheartedly recommend the Superintendent skill, because you need that extra fuel exhaust smoke, especially if you're going to execute the tactic that I'm going to do here. Where I wouldn't recommend doing this at first, I do recognize that the enemy destroyer is going to get spotted, and my T-61 does have the hydroacoustic search consumable, so maybe potentially I can go ahead and make use of that and potentially catch the enemy destroyer with his pants down. Sure enough, he is spotted by our allied aircraft carrier, so I go ahead and get a single salvo off and actually schwack him for about almost just about 6,000 damage, which is awesome. It's a great start. Now, because he was spotted, because I know where he's at now, I'm going to go ahead and pop my fuel exhaust smoke and see if I can get a follow-up shot here on that particular said ship. Again, if he wasn't spotted, I probably would have gone more towards the flank or outside those islands on my left. But because he was spotted, detected, and I have a hydroacoustic search destroyer as strong as the T-61 here, I'm going to go ahead and read the scenario appropriately and properly and try to play a little bit more aggressive to go ahead and support him to get this TD out of the game early. Now, of course, because the Aviari's torpedoes are so incredibly slow, I have to obviously take into account the speed of that and dodge those before I can go ahead and start my turn out. If you didn't launch those, I probably would have began my kite just in time to have the Fiji spotted. Thank God, outside of my main battery, or my main base concealment range of 9.9 kilometers, and I'm going to open up and engage him while knowing that the Colorado is a massive threat. In this ship in particular, yes, with the Fiji having those short fused AP and having those angles that he can go ahead and citadel me with relative ease, I have to know where the big boomers are. The big boomers being the battleship, and the Colorado is a massive threat to me, so I have to constantly, you're going to see me constantly look to see where his guns are looking and to see if I see his salvo in air. Thank God he never decides to shoot me, and I can go ahead and kite away while disengaging. Again, notice those firing angles on the turrets, especially in the kited position. This is where you want to be playing this ship. You do not want to be pushing in. I would say if you are forced into a pushing in position, make sure you have your fuel exhaust smoke ready to go, so you can go ahead and utilize that, get a salvo or 2 off while starting to kite away, and then disengage or get behind the island you're hoping to island camp. Again, on that note, the Francesco is not an island camping ship based upon your very, very fast shells and in flight travel time, given the fact that your DPM is rather shit. And your HE, let's be honest, isn't particularly good either, with a 7% fire chance. You don't want to be camping islands. This is not an island camping ship. And again, you have the fuel exhaust smoke to make use of that open ocean kind of role. Again, as a cruiser in nowadays meta, you should play around islands. Just pick and choose the islands you choose to, play around, basically is what I'm trying to say. Again, I can go wide here knowing that the Colorado won't be able to get shots on me, and I can just force the engagement between me and the Fiji, not having to worry about any other ships on my right taking pot shots or anything on my broadside, forcing me to angle to them and then hence showing my massive citadel broadside to the Fiji, which will absolutely punish me, right? Again, these are all things you have to be thinking about while you're playing the game, and the Francesco is no different because of the massive citadel this thing has. Again, the lead time of the shells, you can see how flat they are, and they really travel to the target incredibly fast. I don't have to lead very much. Of course, my aim is rather lackluster, but because of the heightened shell speed, even at a Fiji at, 13 kilometers, I'm only leading them less than 10 clicks. And I'm still going ahead and scoring hits. Of course, if we hump the border, it's going ahead and fuck that up, and I won't be landing as many shells and where I want to land them as efficiently or effectively, right? So again, just a side note, I can't stand when people go ahead and do this and abuse this mechanic. Again, though, I understand myself and the League Glacier have pushed him into a situation that, you know, if he goes ahead and tries to turn in to disengage from the border, he's most likely going to die. I get that, but again, I just can't stand the idea of someone who's turned into the border and who habitually turns into the border to throw off your shells. It is just an incredibly frustrating in-game mechanic that I guess Wargaming has no intention of changing, so you're gonna have to play around it, right? But anyways, now that we went ahead and dealt with the Fiji, we have to tread cautiously around enemy battleships. And this is a big thing. As we all know, battleships counter cruisers heavily, especially in this game, right? Heavily. They are our counter. I would say you want to disengage from the vast majority of battleship conflicts. You do not want to be engaging battleships because battleships will send you back to port so fast because they only have to get through 16 millimeters of nose, which your nose isn't really sloped or small. It's rather quite large. And then go ahead and punch through, after they punch through 16 millimeters, go ahead and punch through 52 millimeters of your arth ship or whatever, the frontal part of your flat plating there. And that's a citadel. So what? In total, that's around 70, less than 80 millimeters of armor that a battleship has to go and cross in order to citadel you through the nose. Every battleship's going to be able to do that. It's 16 millimeters, especially at tier 7 when you're running into 410s, 406s, 380s are prevalent and relevant a lot. You're not really going to be winning any awards with your armor scheme. So you're going to have to tread cautiously. And this is why I saw the turrets of the Colorado turning towards the direction of my ship, so I went ahead and popped my fuel exhaust smoke and I disengaged. I jumped both torpedoes, which travel 13.5 kilometers in his general vicinity, with a hope and a prayer, hoping that I will go ahead and land maybe one or two, maybe cause a flood, that kind of stuff. Again, with the semi-armor piercing, keep in mind, and that salvo Ryan and me, keep in mind where you're aiming. If you're landing on the belt of any ship, you're probably most likely going to be shattering, and it's a waste of your entire salvo. You're going to want to aim upper deck to superstructure in order to get those full penetrations and deal the most possible damage possible. Again, is SAP a good armament type? Absolutely. Your shell type, sorry. Your SAP is incredibly strong. Does it have a counter? Yes, but you know if we're gonna really be splitting hairs here, if I'm saying that the semi-armor piercing shell is a balanced shell, yes, you can just angle and mitigate damage. Absolutely, but you could do that with any shell, right? Where somehow SAP still has such a large amount of damage or alpha strike potential on the semi-armor piercing shell itself, it's still going to be doing a very respectable amount of damage, and especially to ships that don't have heals, especially at tier 7, it can be quite lethal to deal and damage to those said ships, right? Obviously, what was I going to talk about here? The Francesco, whatever, doesn't have a heal, which God forbid I would love a heal on this ship. It's a tier 7 cruiser. It's not going to have it. So any damage you take on this thing is going to be detrimental towards the overall longevity of your game. I've seen this ship have, I would say on average, this ship is probably surviving around 5 minutes or less in a game, usually for the standard World of Warships player. And again, that just comes down to the lackluster armor scheme and the turret arrangement setup. You're just not going to be winning any rewards with either of the two. So, what else is there to talk about the Francesco that I haven't already really discussed? I mean, I've talked about the torpedoes, I've talked about the guns, including the guns' firing angles. I've talked about the armor scheme and how fucking incredibly poor it is. I've talked about how the DPM isn't incredibly, relevant at all. Matter of fact, for a light cruiser, the lack of DPM is even more apparent and even more detrimental because light cruisers live or die on their DPM and how much damage they can do to keep their relevance in battle. I guess you could go about the utility. I mean, all this thing has is a fuel exhaust smoke and a spotter. Both things are incredibly only benefiting the ship for its purposes and not really for the team. So the team overall, like what it brings to the team and in regards if it's like versatility and its team-oriented gameplay it's none. This is basically a attempted damage farmer that really struggles to even farm damage. So what am I trying to say? this cruiser is a cruiser that really doesn't have a role, and the role that it is going to play, if I had to label it to one, is just potentially eliminate enemy destroyers. That's realistically all you're going to do. But guess what? I don't need a premium ship in order to do that. I can get the Zara and the tech tree, right? I don't need to spend 2,500 doubloons or 3,000 doubloons, whatever it's going to be in the battle pass, in order to get basically a glorified DD killer. And even struggles to do that, because how many salvos are you going to get until that DD falls off? Potentially one with an 11-second reload. So it's just it's one of those things that I just can't help but feel that Wargaming said, well, the semi-armor piercing, we understand it's incredibly powerful, but we have to put a rain on it, right? And a rain check on it. And that's why we get an 11-second reload on semi-armor piercing on 8 semi-armor piercing shells. Again, the Zara, free to play. You just play the game. You can get her. She has, what, a 15-second reload? And what she have? Three. Is it 2 base with the third being superintendent, or is it 3 base with the fourth being superintendent on the Zara? I don't know. I don't have it in front of me. Again, you could just do the Zara, and the Zara has 203mm guns, so it's going to be able to penetrate more armor with a semi-armor piercing, and it's going to be able to do more damage with a semi-armor piercing. Of the 3 ships that are firing sap at this tier for cruisers, obviously we can conclude that the Francesco has the weakest sap of the 3, and that's the Gorizia, the Zara, and obviously the Francesco. The light cruiser, only having a 4-second difference in the reload between the Francesco and the Zara isn't really, like, what am I trying to say? It wouldn't really sway me to say, fuck, you know what we need? We need light cruisers for the Italians that are having anemic reloads just like this. If they want to have longer reloads, that's fine. But I do think that this ship really isn't as strong because it doesn't have a quicker reload. I think this thing could have gotten away with about an 8.5 to a 9-second reload, and that would make this thing incredibly or vastly superior to play, or at least encouragement to play, rather than right now in its current condition. Because right now there really isn't a, hey, you know what I want to play right now? The Francesco. You know what I mean? You just don't see a whole lot of them because they're not really good. And that's what I'm kind of trying to allude to you guys. And that's coming from someone who absolutely loves cruisers. I would just much rather be in a Zara, because I know that I can punish. There's a Citadel from a Colonel at, what, 13, 14 kilometers, by the way. But I would just rather be in a Zara that can also min-max with armor piercing and nuke ships and have 203mm guns with the fuel exhaust smoke and the semi-armor piercing coming from the 203mm guns than what this thing offers, in my opinion. There isn't enough pros and cons to persuade me to play this over the Zara, is what I'm trying to say in a very confusing manner. So, but I guess it's time to go into the final thoughts of the Francesco, because there are some thoughts I got off mine. And I basically already started it with, why would I play this thing, right? And the answer is you don't. You don't. You really wouldn't want to play this thing over ships, especially something that has a similar play style like a Zara. And there's going to be other light cruisers that are going to be able to do and fulfill the light cruiser role with a more team-oriented vibe than this thing. Like, the first one that jumps to mind is the Helena. That thing is awesome. It has 15 HE guns that reload in what? I don't even want to know. Like between 8 and 10, I was going to say, right? And it just does its job as a DD killer better than this thing does. Again, if I'm wrong about the DD killer thing, please tell me, but I don't think this thing really has a clear defined role other than that. I mean, yes, it can chunk cruisers here and there. Great. But it's like, okay, it should be able to do that, right? But like, I mean, it's not like it's winning any prizes for being, it's a glorified cruiser chunker. And then battleships, anything looks to the wrong way and you're nuked. And you don't have a heal. You have your fuel exhaust smoke, but again, 2 charges base, 3 with superintendent. With this thing and how lightly armored it is, and with the relevance of battleships, I mean, they're, 4 or 5 battleship games, usually a game. For battleships, a game, sorry. It's like you're flying through those things, right? And you really can't play islands because of your shell velocity. So it just is this whole combination. The package that you're getting just isn't a strong package, right? And that's what I'm trying to allude you guys. Is she worth 2,500 doubloons? Well, I think at the end of the day, it depends on what you value 2,500 doubloons. Like, I have a feeling most people are probably going to pick it up just because they're doing this, what is it? The whole, you earn 32,000 doubloons or 32,000 steel, and you can, choose what you want to get those resources based upon the events starting from last update, going all the way till Christmas. So I have a feeling some people will be like, fuck it, let's get the battle pass, which is fine. But if you're getting if the main seller on the battle pass is the ship, I have a feeling you're going to be very, very shocked at how bad the ship is, in my opinion. It's not a good ship, and I rarely ever say that about cruisers and or ships in general. But this is one ship I can basically say is just not a very good ship, guys. It's not a good ship. And how to take her down? Simple. Just fucking shoot her. She has a massive citadel. Even if you're in a destroyer, shoot AP at this thing, especially if you're in closer ranges. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised on how much damage you're going to be able to do and how many citadel ribbons you're going to be able to get. It just does not. It does not hold up in game. And again, we've seen this trend with cruiser gameplay. Cruisers are getting harder and harder to play. I mean, and this thing even has a fuel exhaust smoke, right? But again, with the limited charges and your armor scheme, yeah, it's really not outweighing the cons of this thing, like the pros is what I'm trying to say, right? So I guess the last thing that I guess would want to do on my final take on this thing is she is a crew trainer. All I can hope is that Wargaming, when they eventually add an Italian light cruiser line, they see how this thing is and go, yeah, we don't want to copy paste of what we have with the Francesco. We need to go in a little bit of a different direction and make the necessary changes to make the Italian light cruisers good ships and relevant whenever they come to the game. So anyways, guys, that is the video for today. Hopefully the subpar gameplay that you saw of the ship is enough for you to come to a conclusion if whether or not it's worth to pick it up. Again, I will be making content as fast as I can, or when I can, guys. I'm a human being, I'm busy, and I don't live on YouTube, so have patience with me. Anyways, guys, I will catch you all in the next one, guys. You guys have a good one, and peace out.